I will live happily with Nathan forever. Everyone knew that I loved Aiden with all my life. When we had a car accident, I dragged my bleeding leg and begged the doctor to save him first. On a typhoon day, I went to a supermarket to buy the condoms that his young girlfriend specifically asked for. His buddies ridiculed me after getting drunk, saying that I was the most obsequious lapdog around Aiden. After hearing that, I just smiled. I turned around and pulled Aiden, who was buried in another woman's bosom, up. Later, Aiden finally agreed to marry me. However, when the man was about to put the diamond ring on my finger, I changed my mind. 3 hours before the wedding, the makeup artist was styling my hair. I received a call from Aiden's assistant. Special Assistant Vivian, I've searched all the properties under the company and General Manager Aiden's name, but I can't find General Manager Aiden, and I can't get in touch with him either. The assistant's voice was full of anxiety. I, however, reacted calmly. I knew where Aiden was. After hanging up the phone, my best friend Arya held my hand and asked me reluctantly, "Are you really going to marry him? Aiden doesn't care about you at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't play disappearing at this time." I turned around and picked up the car keys on the table. I know he doesn't care about me. It doesn't matter. As long as I can stay by his side in a legitimate way, that's okay for me. I asked Arya to maintain the order of the wedding and then I drove to the hotel. Aiden had a long-term reserved room in this hotel, which was registered with my ID card. I used the spare room card to open the door. The room was dim. There was a faint sound of water coming from the bathroom. By the light of the wall lamp, I saw Aiden sleeping soundly on the bed. Unable to control my emotions, I reached out and placed my hand on the man's chest. The heartbeat under my palm was slow but powerful. It made me feel strangely at ease. It was so nice. At this time, the sound of water in the bathroom stopped. After the door opened, there was a woman's scream. "Ah! Who are you? How did you get in?" The woman's figure was exquisite under the wrap of the bath towel. Her frightened expression at this moment was rather pitiful. If I remembered correctly, she was Aiden's 14th woman. His new girlfriend. "Can't you tell from her outfit?" Aiden's lazy voice came from behind me. "She's wearing a pure white wedding dress. She's the woman I'm going to marry today." After hearing this, the woman even called out my name. "You're Vivian? Vivian? Sure enough, you're so beautiful." In a trance, I actually saw undisguised envy in the woman's eyes. "Do you know," Aiden interrupted the woman's words. "Shut up," and he pointed to the cabinet beside him. "Take the money and leave quickly." The woman obediently shut up and left with the money. Before going out, she winked at me and made an exaggerated lip movement. "Cherish it well." Cherish it? I lowered my head and suppressed the sourness in my heart. The powerful heartbeat under my palm just now was so vivid. It was the only thing he left in this world. I would cherish it well. "What's the matter? You disturbed my sweet dream early in the morning. Are you so afraid that I won't marry you?" Aiden was lying on the bed in a relaxed posture and the silk quilt slipped off. The scar on his chest suddenly caught my eye. I asked him nervously, "The company has been busy these days. You often worked overtime and were with women. Is your heart okay?" "Don't worry. It's fine." Aiden's face darkened in an instant. Until we got into the car, the man didn't even look at me. I thought that Aiden should be angry. He didn't want to marry me in the first place. I forced him to. I just wanted to stay by his side. I didn't need him to love me. As long as I could hear his heartbeat when I woke up every day, I would be satisfied. When the traffic light was red, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my stomach. I couldn't help clenching the steering wheel tightly. The veins on the back of my hand bulged. "What's wrong? Is your stomach hurting again?" Aiden skillfully took out the painkillers and opened the mineral water bottle, then handed them to me together. "Thank you." I swallowed the medicine in one gulp. "Do you want me to drive?" I shook my head and started the car. "No, I won't feel the pain after taking the medicine. You worked overtime until so late last night. You need a good rest." The man got angry again. He kicked the car door hard, making a loud noise. "Vivienne, Pullover. Don't make me repeat it. I obediently pulled over to the roadside and nervously reached out to stroke Aiden's back. People with heart problems should avoid getting emotional the most. The man coldly knocked my hand away, opened the door, and got out of the car. He roughly dragged me out of the driver's seat. I really didn't want to have a tussle on the street, so I obediently sat in the passenger seat. But I still couldn't help reminding him uneasily. You should follow the doctor's advice and try to lose your temper less. Aiden turned his head and glared at me fiercely. Meanwhile, the heart monitoring bracelet on his wrist vibrated violently. I was trembling as I was about to dial 120, but the man snatched my phone away. Vivienne, sit quietly. As long as you don't talk, it will be normal. I stared at the bracelet nervously. Sure enough, it slowly returned to normal. Aiden hated me, and even his heart hated me along with him. I suppressed the sadness in my heart and just sat quietly. I counted the intricate hidden embroidery on the wedding dress bit by bit, thinking about getting on well with those wives at the wedding later. At least I had to make Aiden unable to do without me at work. When the car entered the underground parking lot of the hotel, it suddenly braked sharply. A girl in a wedding dress blocked the front of the car. She was Aiden's 13th girlfriend, the ex-girlfriend who had just been dumped by him a few days ago. When Aiden got out of the car, he slammed the door loudly. Are you fucking crazy? The girl's face brightened up in an instant. Aiden, are you worried about me? I knew you were just scaring me. How could you break up with me? She pointed at me in the passenger seat, crying pitifully and acting coquettish towards the man. Aiden, don't marry her. The man was both angry and amused. Does it matter to you whether I marry her or not? I remember we just broke up a few days ago. If I remember correctly, you took a lot of breakup fees from me. The girl's face turned pale in an instant, but she still didn't give up. Aiden, I regret it. I can't live without you at all. Tell me what I did wrong, and I'll change it, okay? Please don't break up with me. Aiden impatiently furrowed his brows, walked around to the passenger side, opened the door. He pulled me out of the car and carefully lifted my skirt. Look carefully. I'm getting married today. Leave quickly. After hearing this, the girl cried and howled hysterically. Why? She doesn't love you at all. If she really loved you, she wouldn't be able to bear this kind of thing just because of your phone call and go to buy condoms for you and send them to your apartment in the middle of the night. She excitedly pointed at me. This woman wouldn't be able to tolerate this if she really loved you. Aiden, she's just after your money. At that moment, I finally realized that the girl who spent the night at Aiden's house that night was her. She really had the right to make a fuss. Because Aiden had never let any other woman stay overnight at his house, except her. I had always been clear about what I wanted, but at this moment, I still felt a heavy oppression in my heart. Aiden's face darkened terribly, and he pulled me into his arms. Vivian, tell her whether you would leave me if I became a pauper. Whether you're rich or poor, I'll never leave you. I'll always be by your side. The man smiled and showed off. Did you hear that clearly? Besides, Aiden, may not have other strengths, but I'm good at making money. Even if she loves money, I'll always be wealthy. Doesn't that mean we're a match made in heaven? After saying that, the man took my hand and walked towards the elevator. Don't follow, or I won't mind taking back the money I gave you. Sure enough, the girl didn't follow. In the elevator, Aiden folded his arms and looked me up and down. Vivian, won't you be angry? Then he shook his head self-mockingly. Of course you won't be angry because of me. No, I will be angry, Aiden. When you don't take good care of your own body. It was half a year ago. I accompanied Aiden on a business trip to the south. After a lot of bargaining between the two sides, the contract was signed in the middle of the night. Suddenly relaxing after a long battle, everyone started joking and planning the following holiday. A colleague asked me, what does Special Assistant Vivian want to do most now? I want to eat a bowl of warm wontons. Because that day was his birthday. In the past, in the orphanage, every time it was his birthday, the dean, an old lady, would make a bowl of wontons for him. But he was always reluctant to eat them. Often, most of the wontons ended up in my stomach. I meant it sincerely. However, everyone thought it was just a joke. No one cared. I searched for half the night in that strange city but couldn't find a wonton shop. When the heavy rain came, I had to go back to the hotel. At this time, Aiden knocked on my door, drenched in the rain. The man smiled and handed the takeout box he had been keeping warm in his arms to me. It was too late. All the shops were closed. I had to search half of the city to find this one. I don't even know how it tastes. I looked up and saw the raindrops dripping from Aiden's hair and his pale lips. When I took the wontons, I even shivered as the man's cold fingers touched me. A nameless anger suddenly flared up. I even forgot our superior-subordinate relationship. Aiden, your body can't get wet in the rain. Once you catch a cold, you'll have a fever, which will increase the burden on your heart. I pulled the man in and roughly wiped the rain off his head with a towel. The man, however, grasped my wrist tightly. At that time, I didn't notice the hint of testing in his tone at all. Vivian, if you keep nagging, the wontons will get cold. I glanced at the wontons on the table and hesitated. In another 30 minutes, his birthday would be over. While hesitating, I didn't notice the fleeting gloom in the man's eyes. Eat first. Otherwise, it'll be too late. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. The man left with dragging steps. The moment the door closed, I looked at the wontons on the table and suddenly lost my appetite. The elevator soon reached the top floor. I snapped back to reality in an instant. The moment the elevator door opened, the giggles of women came in. Tell me, what tricks does that Vivian have? She's only been around young Master Aiden for just 2 years, yet she made the always playboy agree to marry her. What tricks could she have? They're just some despicable and coquettish tricks. Young Master Aiden is just attracted by novelty for a while. Right. No matter how beautiful a face is, you'll get tired of it after looking at it for a long time. Luna is the one who is talented, beautiful, graduated from a prestigious school, and comes from a noble family. How can Vivian compare with you? She's not even worthy of carrying Luna's shoes. Luna, don't be sad. Young Master Aiden will come back to you sooner or later. The girls surrounded Luna in the middle like she was the moon among the stars. Luna was Aiden's childhood sweetheart. There were rumors in the neighborhood that they had been in a relationship before. Later, when they broke up, Luna even tried to commit suicide. I love brother Aiden. I hope he's happy. Whether this happiness is given by me or not, I'm happy for him. Luna bit her lower lip. I'm still worried that brother Aiden will be deceived by that woman. What a hypocrite. I couldn't help laughing. Aiden glanced at me and took me out of the elevator. Luna. The man pulled me into his arms and looked at me with deep eyes. Even if Vivian deceives me, I'm willing to accept it. As for you, don't pretend that you love me so much anymore. I remember you were very close to the son of your father's driver. Aiden ignored Luna's pale face. Also, when you try to commit suicide again because of conflicts with your boyfriend, please don't blame it on me. Luna was trembling all over. She was tearing at her hands with her own hands but didn't dare to say a word in reply. The girls who had just been defending her were whispering and gossiping, looking at Luna with excitement and disdain in their eyes. Aiden hugged me and walked away from them in big strides. I asked him, "Why did you suddenly expose Miss Luna's affairs? You've been taking the blame for so many years." The man looked at me flirtatiously. "Things are different now. I'll be a married man soon. I can't let Mrs. Aiden misunderstand." Mrs. Aiden. I chewed on these 3 words repeatedly. Suddenly, I was in a rather good mood. "Vivian, the ceremony is about to start. Hurry up and come to put on makeup." Aria's voice rang out from one side. I lifted my skirt and rushed towards the bride's dressing room. "Vivian. Wait." The man suddenly caught up and handed me a velvet box. He stared at me without blinking but didn't say a word. Then he turned around to greet the guests who had already arrived. I opened the box in confusion. There was a handkerchief inside. A blood-stained handkerchief. What does Aiden mean? "It's so unlucky to give you this blood-stained thing on such a happy day." Arya told me to throw the handkerchief away. I shook my head, touched the patterns on the handkerchief, and just felt that it was somehow familiar, but my mind was so muddled that I couldn't figure it out for a moment. At this time, the phone rang. When the voice on the other end of the phone came into my ears, my hands and feet went numb in an instant, as if I had been electrified, and my fingertips were aching. After that, I was like a puppet on strings, numbly following the arrangements of the master of ceremonies. I stood at one end of the flower path and saw Aidan walking towards me step by step. Around us were the blessings and applause of the guests. The man smiled and took my hand. When the diamond ring was about to be put on my finger, suddenly, the puppet was given a soul. Tears fell down, and I curled my fingers to avoid the diamond ring in Aidan's hand. The man stared at me in shock. I was trembling all over and put my hand on Aidan's chest. The heartbeat under my palm was fast and powerful. At that instant, the man suddenly smiled weakly, and a little red appeared in his eyes. Aidan grasped my hand so tightly that it seemed he was going to break it. What? Have you finally realized that this heart isn't his? Wrong. It was wrong from the very beginning. Ms. Vivian, regarding the heart donation of Mr. Leo that you entrusted to us, after our investigations from multiple aspects, we found. At that time, his heart was severely damaged in the accident and didn't meet the donation conditions at all. The heart beating in Aidan's chest wasn't Leo's at all. I was wrong. Leo had completely left this world. He left nothing behind. Tears rolled down my cheeks one after another. My chaotic emotions made it take me a while to realize that something was wrong with Aidan's words. Had he known it all along? I didn't dare to dig deeper. But then I heard the man questioning me word by word again. Vivian, are you planning to abandon me again? Again? I looked up at the man in surprise and doubt. But I saw the man fall down with a painful look on his face while clutching his chest. Aidan. At that moment, it felt like my heart was twisted with pain just like his. Aidan had been in a coma in the hospital for 2 days. I stayed in the ward, looking at the man's pale face and remembered the dean's instructions. Aidan had a heart operation 2 years ago. The operation was very successful at that time, and the post-operative recovery was also quite ideal. However, people with heart problems should avoid getting emotional and overworking the most. If it happens again, the consequences will be unimaginable. I forced myself to take a deep breath, but I still couldn't help feeling a lingering fear. It had been 2 years, and taking care of Aidan seemed to have become a habit of mine. However, Leo's heart wasn't here. I got up and looked out of the window. Downstairs, a girl helped a boy to a seat. She lovingly took the boy's hand and blew gently on the small wound on it. Then she took out a handkerchief and wrapped the wound on the boy's wrist with it. Handkerchief, blood. I remembered. I rushed to the bedside and looked at the man's pale face. Aidan, are you a stone or something? No one answered me. Leo and I were like street kids in the city. We had no parents. When we were caught by Rufus to beg, we met a boy chained up in that dilapidated yard. Rufus called him Stone. It meant that the boy was as stubborn as a stone in a latrine. The little boy had forgotten a lot of things because of a head injury, but he had a fierce temper. Weak animals would huddle together for warmth. At night, Leo and I would secretly bring food to the boy. When the boy was being beaten, Leo would try to distract Rufus. But when Rufus realized what was going on, the 3 of us would often get a severe beating. However, none of that mattered. In that extremely cold winter, there were 3 always hungry children relying on each other and keeping each other warm in that desolate yard. When we were on the verge of starving to death, we decided to run away. The wind was especially strong that night, blowing the snowflakes swirling around. Rufus was drunk like a mess again. We carefully avoided the wine bottles under our feet, one pulling the other, walked out of the house and held our breath as we walked out of that yard. The moment the yard gate opened, the dog tied to the back wall barked furiously. Rufus' cursing voice exploded behind us all of a sudden. Run! Leo pulled me, and I pulled Stone. We fled in the snow, sometimes sinking deep and sometimes not. Suddenly, Leo let go of my hand. If we three stay together like this, none of us will be able to escape. I'll distract him. You two run first. Then go and call the police. No, I'll go. You take her and run. Stone, come back. When Aiden woke up, it was already evening. The man's eyes fell on me, and there was a flash of light in his eyes. Why didn't you leave? Leo's heart wasn't transplanted into me. There's no need for you to stay by my side anymore. I shook my head and took Aiden's arm. There was a shallow scar on his elbow, which he got when he tried to protect me from Rufus beating. I once used a handkerchief to bandage his wound. Gently rubbing the scar with my fingers, I asked him, Aiden, does it still hurt? You, remembered? Aiden asked cautiously. I nodded. Surprise, grievance, various emotions flashed across the man's eyes. It's been so many years. It doesn't hurt at all. After Leo and I escaped, we went to the police station to report the case. But when we brought the police to the small yard, we couldn't find you at all. Even Rufus disappeared. We really searched for you for a long time. Leo and I were even afraid that something had happened to you, so we searched every trash can nearby one by one. Until we were sent back to our hometowns and placed in the welfare home. I looked at the man and repeated in a low voice, Stone, no, Aiden, Leo and I really didn't abandon you. After we were able to make money, Leo and I would go to that city to look for you every year. Now that I know you're still alive, Leo must be very happy in heaven. When mentioning Leo, my heart felt as if it was being rubbed by an invisible hand. It hurt so much. I raised my head and forced back my tears. Leo, after you left, I found Stone. That snowy night, I was caught back by Rufus and almost beaten to death. I nervously held Aiden's hand, and the man patted me soothingly. It's okay. Don't be afraid. My family found me. When they rescued me, they also took Rufus away. They tortured him for half a year before handing him over to the police. Later, I also looked for you too. I shook my head with a bitter smile. Leo and I didn't have our formal names until we arrived at the welfare home. Our household registrations were settled then. It wasn't easy to find you just based on your appearance. It was difficult, but hard work pays off. I found you too. But before we had a chance to recognize each other, Leo passed away. At that time, you fainted from crying several times at the funeral, and you were in a daze every day. Vivian, you used to take line 1 of the subway after work, get off at Yushuan Community after 9 stops, and then walk for 15 minutes to your rented place, right? I looked up in shock. How did he know that? The man leaned on the pillow and said with a bitter smile, because I followed you for 3 full months. You almost missed your stop on the subway. It was me who reminded you. You were drunk and lying on a park bench. It was me who stayed with you all night. When you were in a daze and ran a red light, it was me who pulled you back. You even turned around and thanked me. Have you forgotten? I kept apologizing with tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't remember any of it at all. I couldn't accept Leo's death at that time and didn't care about the people and things around me at all. I told my doctor friend about your situation. He said you had self-destructive tendencies. At that time, I came up with the stupidest idea, pretending that I had received Leo's heart transplant. I asked someone to leak the news to your friend Aria. Sure enough, you quickly came to apply for a job in my company and were extremely accommodating to me. Aiden looked at me with a sad tone. Sometimes I'm really jealous of Leo. He left when you loved him the most, making you remember him for a lifetime. I buried my face in my hands and tears fell down. To me, Leo was like a brother, a family member, but not a lover. He left forever when I owed him the most. Leo and I finished college with the help of kind-hearted people. After graduating from college, we both found our ideal jobs one after another. When we received our first month's salary, we went to a restaurant extravagantly. That day, Leo confessed his love to me. Just 10 minutes after I rejected him, a gas explosion happened in the restaurant. At that instant, Leo tightly protected me under him. I owed Leo too much. When we were kids, whenever we got something to eat with great difficulty, I always got to eat it first. When we were begging, Leo always stood in front of me when we were beaten and kicked maliciously. Even in the face of life and death, Leo left the chance of survival to me. Outside the operating room, the doctor told me that there was no hope. At that moment, I went deaf. In a daze, I only saw the mouths of the people around me opening and closing constantly, while I felt like I was sinking in the deep sea. Despair and regret were wrapping around like seaweed. I lived in a daze, and sometimes I even forgot to eat for the whole day. I was just like a walking corpse. Until my good friend Aria brought me the news of Leo's heart transplant. Since Leo's death, the coarse cloth that had been covering my heart was lifted. For the first time in a long while, I took a deep breath. Leo hadn't completely left me. I still had a chance to make up for my mistakes and atone for my sins. Since that day, I had taken care of Aiden's daily life in the hospital like a wife. The man had driven me away many times. Go away, Vivian. You stayed by my side and even agreed to marry me because of Leo's heart. Now the truth has come out. I lied to you. You can just leave without having to put up with this anymore. I ignored him. I just put the lunchbox heavily on the table. Eat. Aiden obediently opened the lunchbox. The fragrance of preserved egg and lean pork congee wafted out all at once. The man blinked. Still remember it? How could I forget it? When we were driven out by Rufus to beg, we passed by a congee shop. The diners in the shop were eating a bowl of preserved egg and lean pork congee contentedly. The steaming atmosphere made the three children outside the glass window drool all over the place. The three children tacitly exchanged glances. We bought a bowl of preserved egg and lean pork congee with the money we begged for. The shop owner disliked that we were dirty and didn't allow us to eat in the shop. The little Aiden had a very proud temper and was about to argue with the shop owner straight away. Leo and I had been familiar with such disgusted looks since we were young and knew that it would be useless to make a fuss. After pulling Aiden at that time away, the three children found a sheltered place and opened that bowl of preserved egg and lean pork congee with great expectation. One spoonful for you, one spoonful for me. We were reluctant to swallow it even when it was in our mouths. Leo was reluctant to eat it, and most of the congee went into the stomachs of Aiden and me. Aiden even licked the box in the end. In the cold wind, the three of us looked at each other and burst out laughing contentedly. Although we were severely beaten later because we didn't beg for any money. However, that bowl of congee became the most beautiful memory of the whole winter. Aiden, who hadn't had an appetite for a long time, quickly finished a bowl of congee. I quietly let out a sigh of relief. The man put down the congee bowl contentedly and looked up to see my teasing eyes. He blushed unexpectedly. At that time, I licked the bowl because I was too hungry. Thinking about it, it was really embarrassing. CEO Aiden was so ashamed that he buried his whole face in the pillow. A strand of naughty hair stuck out from under the quilt, looking extremely cute. I bit my lip, not daring to laugh out loud. After Aiden was discharged from the hospital, we went to the cemetery to pay tribute to Leo together. Leo in the photo was smiling brightly and happily. 12 years had passed, and the three of us finally got together again. Leo, thank you for protecting me back then. Without you two, I might have been beaten to death by Rufus long ago. I heard from Vivian that you two had never given up looking for me all these years. Thank you. Now the stone you had been looking for has come back. Aiden put the bouquet in front of Leo's tomb and raised his hand to fist bump with Leo in the photo. Leo, you can rest assured. We stayed in front of Leo's tomb for a long time, just like when we huddled together to keep warm when we were kids. When we were going down the mountain, I sprained my ankle. Aiden nervously examined the injury. Vivian, why are you so clumsy? The man naturally crouched down. Get on. I'll carry you down. I hesitated. He had just been discharged from the hospital. What? Do you want to hop down the mountain on one foot? Although he had grown up, his temper was still bad. I leaned on Aiden's back, and the man carried me down the mountain step by step. His steps were steady and big. Aiden, thank you. Now when I think back to the time when Leo passed away, there was someone who quietly accompanied me for 3 months, accompanied me to work and accompanied me home, reminded me when I was confused, and protected me when I was drunk. It makes me feel that those days didn't seem so hard anymore. Thank you also for the lie you made up, which gave me an outlet for my guilt towards Leo. Otherwise, the huge debt and guilt might have killed me. However, I still didn't dare to like you. Aiden explained to the public that the wedding was postponed due to health reasons. No one doubted it. Because Aiden suddenly fainted at the wedding, the hot search topic that the heir of the Aiden family was seriously ill and incurable once ranked first on the hot search list. As soon as Aiden was discharged from the hospital, he held a press conference and told the public through the media that he didn't have an incurable disease. The fainting was just because he was overworked in preparing for the wedding. Soon, the rumors that Aiden was going to die quickly died down. The employees of the group began to work in an orderly manner and wouldn't be in a constant state of panic. During this period, I did my best in my job as Aiden's first assistant. It's just that there would occasionally be a bouquet of lilies on my desk, or afternoon tea sometimes. There would even be an exquisitely packaged gift box. When I opened it, there were a pair of flat shoes inside. Be careful of your injury. Don't wear high heels recently. After the lie was exposed, Aiden seemed to break free from his shackles all at once. He started to pursue me like he did with his previous girlfriends. My heart was in turmoil. I was uneasy and flustered, until I met a woman in a coffee shop. A familiar woman. After work, I deliberately avoided Aiden. I went to the coffee shop across the street and ordered a cup of coffee. While waiting, a woman came up to greet me. "Vivian, do you still remember me?" Of course I remembered her. She was Aiden's 14th girlfriend. She was the one who was with Aiden in the hotel on the wedding day. For the first time, I showed my dislike for Aiden's girlfriend. I couldn't even wait for my coffee and turned around to leave. The woman called out to me. "Aiden has a secret. Do you want to hear it?" I ignored her and continued walking. "If you don't listen, you'll regret it." I had suffered a lot from regret in my life. The debt to Leo made regret gnaw at me day and night like ants. I stopped in my tracks. I followed the woman and sat in a corner. "I'm not Aiden's girlfriend. I'm his senior at school and have my own entertainment company. My husband is a famous psychologist. Aiden once asked my husband for help because of your illness." I looked at her in shock. It was unbelievable. She shook her head with a bitter smile and explained with difficulty. "For your illness, Aiden came up with the stupidest but also the most effective way to make you transfer the guilt you felt for Leo onto him. Perhaps because of the experiences in our childhood, Aiden fell in love with you quickly, but he didn't know in what capacity he should love you, because the more obedient you were to him, the more it showed that you cared about Leo. He has been living a very fragmented life in these 2 years. Maybe you could also feel that his helplessness made him become," she tried hard to find a proper adjective, "capricious." At this time, the coffee I ordered was just delivered. It smelled very bitter and the bitterness went from my nose all the way to my heart. I blinked and suppressed the bitterness in my heart. Aiden doesn't love me. In these 2 years, apart from you, he had 13 girlfriends one after another. I've met every one of them. I even picked out the gifts for them, birthday gifts for girlfriends, Valentine's Day gifts. No, it's not like that. The woman interrupted me hastily. They are all artists from my company, little unknown ones on the 68th tier of the entertainment industry. That brat Aiden hired them to be his girlfriends just to stimulate you. I said at that time that this move was inappropriate and too hurtful. And those gifts were all meant for you. He kept them at home alone. Because of Mr. Leo, you even risked your life to protect Aiden. The more you cared about that brat, the more painful you were. He didn't dare to tell you the truth for fear that you couldn't bear it. He actually came up with such a clumsy way to stimulate you, just hoping that you would care about your own feelings and not be trapped in guilt." The woman suddenly let out a sigh of relief with a tone of relief. "Fortunately, you got to know the truth before the wedding. Otherwise, I don't know what that kid would have become." Suddenly she looked at me cautiously and tentatively verified. "Those were really hired actresses, and there were contracts for all of them." Only one person ignored the contract and caused you trouble. Don't worry. I've already fired her. Miss Vivian, you should believe in Aiden. He has really sacrificed a lot for you. I picked up the coffee and took a sip. Among the bitterness, I could actually taste a faint fragrance. I believe in Aiden. I believe in that teenager who lured the bad guys away alone for his companions 10 years ago. Seeing that I didn't say anything, the person opposite became even more anxious. Miss Vivian, I believe him. And thank you for telling me all this and unlocking the knot in my heart. The woman finally let out a sigh of relief and smiled sincerely. My name is Ava. Nice to meet you. She blinked cutely. Don't tell that brat Aiden that I met you privately. I said goodbye to Ava and slowly finished that cup of coffee by myself. When I left, it started to drizzle. I stood under the eaves and watched Aiden walking slowly towards me with an umbrella from across the street. I told you that the weather was bad today and you should bring an umbrella. You just never listen. The man walked closer, nagging. Why should I bring an umbrella? Aren't you here? What I said was really intimate. Aiden, who had always been decisive and efficient, was obviously stunned. I took a step further, walked forward, stood on tiptoe, put my hands around the man's neck, and asked softly. Aiden, can I pursue you? In an instant, the man's eyes were as brilliant as fireworks exploding. But the next moment, Aiden roared and picked me up. Vivian, your ankle is still injured. Who told you to stand on tiptoe?